Welcome to Story Time, a place where real fear meets the unknown. Here, we dive into true scary stories, chilling suspense, dark mysteries, and haunting horror that will make you question what's real and what's watching. Every story is carefully told to pull you into the shadows because sometimes the most terrifying things actually happened. New stories drop 3 times a week, so if you love suspense, mystery, and horror that keeps you up at night, this channel was made for you. Make sure you subscribe, like, and follow Storytime so you never miss a story. Turn on notifications because the next one might be worse than the last.
The first sign something was wrong wasn't the silence. It was the way the road disappeared. 1 minute, we were rolling down a smooth 2-lane highway, the kind that made you feel safe even in the middle of nowhere. The next, the pavement thinned out like someone had peeled it away from the desert, leaving behind a cracked strip of asphalt that looked forgotten by time. My dad didn't notice at first. He was too focused on the GPS mounted above the steering wheel, the screen glowing like it held the answer to everything. 23 minutes faster, he said, tapping the display. This route cuts around the mountain. My mom sat in the passenger seat with her travel binder on her lap. She had printed maps, campground reservations, emergency contacts, and a checklist she'd laminated. She was the cautious one. Dad was the optimistic one. And me? I was 16, sitting at the dinette with my little brother, Jalen, who was 9 and already bored of the trip. We'd been on the road for 4 days, Michigan to Arizona. A family RV road trip that was supposed to be the biggest thing we'd ever done. Dad had rented the RV months ago. He called it our rolling hotel. It had a tiny bathroom, a kitchenette, and bunks that made my brother feel like he was in a spaceship. Mom took 1,000,000 pictures, every gas station, every state line sign, every welcome to mall billboard. The plan was simple. Drive to the Grand Canyon, spend 2 nights, then head toward Nevada and loop back through Utah. We were halfway between Flagstaff and the canyon when the GPS suggested a faster route. Dad didn't hesitate. Mom did. She leaned forward and squinted at the screen. That doesn't look like the highway. It's a road, Dad said. It's still marked. Mom reached down and pulled out her printed map. She traced her finger along the page. This route, it goes through nothing. Dad laughed. That's the point. No traffic. I watched them in the front seats, the way couples do when they've been in a moving box together for days. Everything becomes a debate. Everything becomes a tone. Mom's tone said, "Be careful." Dad's tone said, "Relax." The RV turned. The highway fell behind us, and the desert swallowed the road. At first, it wasn't scary. It was almost pretty. Wide open land, golden sand, distant hills that looked purple in the heat haze. The sky was so huge it made you feel small in a peaceful way. Then the road started getting worse. The cracks in the asphalt turned into patches. The patches turned into gravel. The gravel turned into dirt. Dad slowed down, his hands tightening on the wheel. "Okay," he muttered. "It'll connect back up." Mom didn't say anything. She just stared out the window, her lips pressed together. Jalen was playing on his tablet until the bumps got so bad he dropped it and yelled, "Ow!" "Seatbelt!" Mom snapped, turning around. "Now!" The RV rattled like it was made of loose screws. Cabinets clicked. The fridge groaned. Something in the back clanked like a chain. Dad drove another 5 miles, then 10, then 20. The GPS still insisted we were on the right path, but the road wasn't a road anymore. It was 2 tire tracks cutting through desert scrub. And then, without warning, the RV lurched. A loud bang echoed through the cabin. The whole vehicle tilted to the right. Mom screamed. Jalen started crying. Dad slammed on the brakes. For a moment, everything was still except for the ticking sound of the engine cooling. Then Dad whispered, "No, no, no, no." He climbed out and I followed, stepping into heat that felt like opening an oven. The sun was brutal. The air shimmered. The smell of hot rubber and dust filled my nose. Dad crouched near the back tire. It was shredded, not just flat, destroyed. A strip of rubber hung off the rim like torn skin. Dad stood up slowly, staring out at the empty desert. No cars, no buildings, no power lines, nothing. Just miles of dry land in every direction. Mom stepped out behind us, holding Jalen's hand. Her face was pale, sweat already forming at her hairline. "Do we have service?" she asked. Dad pulled out his phone, stared at it, then shook his head. Mom pulled out hers. Nothing. I checked mine. 1 bar, then 0. Dad forced a smile. "It's fine. We have a spare." He opened the storage compartment and dragged out the spare tire. That's when the second problem appeared. The jack. Dad tried to set it under the RV, but the ground was uneven and sandy. The jack sank as soon as he put weight on it. He tried again with a piece of wood. It sank. He tried again with a flatter spot. It sank. Every time the RV shifted slightly, making Mom flinch like it was going to fall on him. After 30 minutes, Dad's shirt was soaked, his hands were shaking, and the sun felt hotter. Mom whispered, "We should stay inside." Dad nodded. We climbed back into the RV. The air inside was thick and warm. The AC was running, but the RV's generator was working harder than it should, humming with strain. Mom handed out water bottles. "Small sips," she said. "We don't know how long this will take." Jalen sniffled. "Are we gonna die?" Mom's eyes snapped to him. "No." Dad laughed too loudly. "Absolutely not. This is an adventure." But I could hear something in his voice, not confidence, fear. Hours passed. Dad went outside twice more, trying the jack again, but the heat was getting worse. The generator's sound began to change, like it was struggling. Then, around 3:15 p.m., it coughed and died. The RV went quiet. The AC shut off. The fans stopped. The refrigerator went silent. The air inside immediately started heating up. Mom stared at Dad. Dad stared at the dead generator switch. And for the first time, nobody said anything, because we all understood what it meant. The RV wasn't a hotel anymore. It was a metal box sitting in the desert. And the desert was winning. Mom opened all the windows, but the air outside wasn't cooler. It was like breathing through a hairdryer. Dad tried the ignition. The engine turned over, then sputtered, then died. Dad tried again. Nothing. Mom's voice was calm, but sharp. "What's happening?" Dad swallowed. I don't know." He opened the hood compartment. I watched from the doorway as he leaned in, then backed away. He looked at me, his eyes wide. "We're overheating," he said. Mom sat down hard on the bench seat. Jalen whispered, "I'm thirsty." Mom handed him another bottle, but her hands were trembling. I looked out the window. The sun was dropping slowly, but it still felt like it was burning us alive. The GPS screen was still lit, still confident, still wrong. Dad tried calling 911, no signal. Mom tried calling roadside assistance, no signal. Dad tried climbing the small hill behind the RV, no signal. That's when Mom said the sentence that changed everything. "We're going to have to wait for someone to come." Dad stared at the road we'd been on, the empty dirt track. He swallowed. "No one's coming." Mom stood up. "Don't say that." Dad's voice cracked. "We haven't seen a single car in hours." Silence. Then Mom said, very softly, "We shouldn't have taken this route." Dad's jaw tightened. He looked away, and I realized this wasn't just a breakdown. This was a trap. As the sun began to set, the desert changed. The heat eased slightly, but the shadows grew longer. The hills became darker shapes. The wind picked up, carrying sand that tapped against the RV like tiny fingers. Dad made a plan. He said we'd stay in the RV overnight. At sunrise, he would walk to find a signal or help. Mom didn't like it, but she didn't have a better option. That night, the RV was dark. No lights, no fans. We used flashlights and battery lanterns. Mom rationed food, crackers, peanut butter, granola bars. Dad checked the water supply. We had about 9 gallons left, plus whatever bottles were in the fridge. Dad said it should be enough for a day or two, but he didn't sound sure. Jalen slept curled up beside Mom. I stayed awake, listening to the desert. It was so quiet it felt unnatural. Then, sometime after midnight, I heard something outside, a crunch, like footsteps in sand. I sat up, my heart instantly racing. Dad was asleep in the front. Mom was half asleep. The sound came again. Crunch, crunch. I held my breath and moved toward the window. The moonlight was bright enough to see the outline of the desert, and then I saw it. Not an animal, not a coyote, a person, a figure moving near the back of the RV. My throat went dry. I shook Dad's shoulder hard. "Dad," I whispered. "Dad, wake up." He blinked, confused. "What?" I pointed. Dad followed my finger. His face changed instantly. Mom woke up. "What is it?" Dad didn't answer. He grabbed the flashlight and turned it on, shining it out the window. The beam hit the figure. A man, thin, dusty, standing too close to our RV. He raised his hands slowly, like he was surrendering. Dad cracked the window just an inch. "Who are you?" The man's voice was hoarse. "Please, water." Mom grabbed Jalen and pulled him closer. Dad hesitated. Everything in my brain screamed danger. But the man looked like he was dying. His lips were cracked, his eyes were sunken, his shirt was stiff with dirt. Dad opened the door carefully, keeping the flashlight on him. The man stumbled forward. Mom whispered, "Don't let him in." Dad handed him a bottle of water. The man drank like he hadn't tasted water in days. When he finished, he wiped his mouth and said, "Your RV, it's stuck?" Dad nodded. "We're stranded." The man laughed weakly. "Me too." Mom's voice was tight. "Where did you come from?" The man pointed toward the darkness. "My truck broke down 2 days ago." 2 days. My stomach twisted. That meant people could be stranded out here and nobody would know. Dad asked, "Is there a road?" The man nodded slowly. "There's a highway, but it's far, 10 miles maybe." Mom inhaled sharply. 10 miles in desert heat. Dad looked at Mom. Mom looked at Dad. Neither of them wanted to say it, but the man did. "If you don't get help tomorrow, you won't last." The words hung in the air like a curse. Dad thanked him, gave him another bottle, and watched him walk away into the darkness. Mom locked the door behind him, and then she started crying silently. The next morning, the sun rose like a threat. The RV was already hot by 7 a.m. Dad packed a backpack with water, snacks, a flashlight, and a reflective blanket. Mom begged him not to go, but Dad said, If I don't, we're done." He kissed Mom's forehead. He hugged Jalen. Then he looked at me. "You're in charge," he said. And then he walked into the desert. For hours, we waited. Mom sat by the window, watching the horizon. Jalen slept, waking up every so often to ask if Dad was coming back. I tried to stay calm, but my thoughts kept spiraling. What if Dad got lost? What if he collapsed? What if we never saw him again? The heat climbed. The air inside the RV became unbearable. Mom had us lie on the floor where it was slightly cooler. She used wet paper towels on Jalen's forehead. Around noon, Mom's phone buzzed. 1 bar, then 2. Her eyes widened. She grabbed it like it was a lifeline. And then, for 1 second, a text went through. "Dad. Found signal. Called 911. Hold on." Mom screamed, not in fear, in relief. She hugged Jalen. She hugged me. And then she whispered, "Thank you, God." We waited again. An hour passed. Then another. Then, finally, we heard it. A sound that didn't belong in the desert. A distant engine. Then another. And then, on the horizon, a cloud of dust. Mom climbed onto the seat, staring out the window. I pushed my face against the glass. 2 vehicles appeared, a sheriff's SUV and a rescue truck. They rolled toward us like something out of a movie. Mom ran outside, waving her arms. The sheriff stepped out. He was tall, wearing sunglasses and a hat. "You folks all right?" he called. Mom nodded, crying again. Yes, my husband. He walked for help." The sheriff nodded. "We found him about 3 miles from the highway. He's okay." Mom collapsed onto her knees. The rescue crew checked the RV, confirmed the tire, confirmed the overheated engine, confirmed what we already knew. The sheriff looked at Dad when he arrived in the back of the SUV, dusty and exhausted. "You took the GPS shortcut," the sheriff said. Dad nodded. The sheriff sighed. "You're not the first." Dad's face tightened. "How many?" The sheriff didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Enough that we call this road the Trap." That night, after we were towed back to civilization, I lay in a motel bed and stared at the ceiling. The air conditioning hummed softly. The walls felt safe, but my mind kept replaying the desert, the silence, the heat, the man asking for water, and the sheriff's words, "You're not the first." The next morning, Mom threw the GPS into the suitcase like it had betrayed us. Dad didn't argue. He just looked at it, quiet. And for the rest of the trip, Mom used paper maps, because once you've been trapped by a shortcut, you never trust the screen again.
We thought getting rescued meant it was over until the sheriff told us the truth. He said that road had a name, and it wasn't a shortcut. It was a trap. And we weren't the first family stranded out there. And that brings us to the end of tonight's story. If this story stayed with you, if it made you pause, think, or sent a chill down your spine, then Storytime did exactly what it was meant to do. Here on Storytime, we uncover real stories, unexplained moments, and true events that remind us. Some things are far stranger than fiction. If you enjoy suspense, mystery, and stories that linger long after the screen goes dark, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new upload. I release new stories 3 times a week, and I'd love to have you back for the next one. Until then, stay safe, stay curious, and remember, every story has a shadow. Good night, and I'll see you next time on Storytime.